Welcome to Destination Marriage, a podcast about successfully navigating the winding roads of marriage. Whether you're newlyweds, engaged, looking to get married, or have been married for years, we want to share with you how we have navigated those winding roads over the past 19 years in our marriage.
Join us on this journey as we talk about real-life experiences in a marriage and what we have learned along the way. We discuss love, travel, fitness, raising kids, friendships, and much more, all from the perspective of our lives together.
Happiness, love, grace, passion are some of the things we all strive for in a marriage, and we invite you to take this journey with us.
Welcome to Destination Marriage.
Welcome to episode 29 of Destination Marriage. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Tommy.
And we are thrilled to have you join us on this journey today. So today's topic is nitpicking, nagging, and controlling your spouse. What could go wrong?
Nothing.
Absolutely
Those are very healthy actions to take towards each other in a marriage.
Totally agree.
This actually came from one of our listeners. She had reached out to us via Instagram, and I'll just read her exact quote so we can this is what prompted us to do the topic today because she asked for it. So she wrote into us. She said, "I have been looking for resources on how to not nag my husband and how to stop trying to control him. I nitpick and it drives him into crazy anger. I try to stop and then I mess up and it's driving us apart. Do you have any recommendations or could you cover this in a future podcast?"
So first off, thank you to our listener for reaching out and obviously, asking us our opinion or our thoughts. And this is definitely something that I feel like maybe we've touched on here or there, but just to kind of look at this situation and have an opportunity to speak or have a conversation around it. Now, these can be very minor or very serious and dangerous issues inside of a marriage. While we certainly have some fun discussing this today, we recognize we're not marriage counselors, and the best course of action might just be seeking professional help altogether.
Yeah, because, she wrote in, so let's kind of break this down, right? And so I'm almost putting kind of an asterisk here. As a man and as a husband, please know that my heart hurts for this wife. Mm-hmm. This is, I think she's in serious territory, not like, oh, I nitpick my husband and it bugs him. Mm-hmm. Like, when she says it's driving us apart, she's reaching out to us. So we thank you for that. And I just want to say my heart does go out to you on this. So please don't take some of our joking about situations and laughing about stuff that we've gone through as any way that we're kind of downplaying the seriousness.
Right. Not at all.
Right. So I just wanted to kind of say, we're speaking through our lens, but we do recognize how impactful this is. So please, if you are listening to this episode and you're the one that wrote us in, please don't take any of our joking as downplaying your, what's impacting your marriage. Mm-hmm. Fair?
Yeah, I'm on board.
Okay. So let's kind of talk through the quote. So we're going to, really focus on each of those, nitpicking and then nagging and then controlling.
Yeah, because they're all very different, but definitely there's links between each one.
Yeah, because big picture, controlling your spouse kind of goes hand in hand with nagging and nitpicking because those are kind of tools that you can use to manipulate or control your spouse if done negatively, right?
Yeah, I think, with controlling your spouse, how it kind of goes hand in hand with that is, with nagging or nitpicking, ultimately they could be trying to really just mold you into what they want.
Right.
Which is very controlling.
Right.
So what would you consider nitpicking?
Yeah. I think nitpicking is finding fault in things that that ultimately really don't matter, but just that annoy you, that are different, that are just something that you just annoys you. That's when I think annoyance when I hear the word nitpicking. Okay. Right. Like I'm annoyed at this, so I'm just gonna just dig at him about whatever.
And it can be little things, right?
It's nitpicking it almost sounds like little things.
To me, it sounds like little things. Yeah, nothing major. But realistically, you come into a marriage and you both have, everybody has little things that annoy everyone, right? You're not marrying somebody who's a carbon copy of you. So there may be things that over time become irritable. but when we're talking about nitpicking, I feel like it's almost like, you're just like you don't stop, highlighting all of the things that you find, to be faults in this person.
Yeah. I mean, I
spouse.
see a big difference between like nitpicking and nagging as far as how we see it. Nagging is about over like some event or something that you need or want. Whereas nitpicking is like finding fault in the other person.
Right.
And we had talked about this earlier is, a lot of times it's the person has just unrealistic expectations of the other person, and just instead of discussing it with them, they just dig at them.
Yeah.
Nitpick over little things. I don't think nitpicking over big things is like, oh, you didn't pay the bills. Like that's not nitpicking. That's like fundamental like issues, but it's like
you're putting our life at risk. That's different versus, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? Or, just little things like leaving your socks on the floor, or,
or leaving the toilet
seat up.
That one's one that you nitpick at me about.
I mean, I'm kind of outnumbered in this house with the toilet seat up. Let's be real.
All right.
It's like all of the toilet seats up. I can't get one with it down.
Nope. Sorry. That's an unrealistic request. I think, we were talking about how, 2020 with this lockdown and everybody being home, I would venture to say, I mean, we already know that there's mental health issues are skyrocketing because of people being isolated, but I'd bet that there's a lot of nitpicking because there's just so much visibility to each other.
Right.
Right. And so I bet you in 2020, it's increased quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real. Neither one of us really knows if maybe this particular couple, they're now experiencing a different day-to-day, life as far as like they're probably both working from home, and who knows, maybe they have the kids that are at home as well doing virtual learning. And so maybe that's what's caused this whole nitpicking and nagging situation. It may not have existed last year. I don't know, but this is probably something
I don't read that into this.
Okay,
I
let's
read,
just say,
right. I understand what you're saying. I think for
year,
her, the way she's worded that, like, it sounds like this has been an ongoing problem, deeper than just nitpicking, right?
But
I think she uses nitpicking, and it's much deeper than that. It's not nitpicking. It's controlling.
But we don't know. So like, we're just reading
we're reading between the lines a little bit.
Yeah, I say, nitpicking, because obviously, you can nitpick at a million different things. And like we said, there can be minor things. But I do think right now, in the midst of this pandemic, you're around your spouse day in and day out. You usually get that break, that 8-hour break, or when your husband or your wife goes to work, you go off and you do your own thing. And you may even live in an area where you don't even have an open gym to even just get that hour away from the house.
Right.
So now you're recognizing every single annoying thing.
If you let it.
If you let it, yeah.
Right.
But I think people are probably experiencing that more so now, especially if you've been married for a really long time. Maybe those little things that before were like, not a big deal. Now you're like,
that's all you think about, like every day.
I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, they chew so loud, or they like
chewing so loud.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think.
I hate the way you chew.
Remember, these are little things. Nitpicking are they're minor things.
Yeah.
It's not paying the bills. It's they leave their shoes laying around, or
it can build resentment over time.
Not putting the toothpaste cap back on.
That was one that was I used to nitpick about. It's still
yes.
It still kind of bugs me.
Okay, but here's the thing.
You know what else my wonderful, beautiful wife does?
Get your own toothpaste. If we don't share
that was our solution.
And guess what? It's never been a problem. I have my toothpaste and you have yours. Easy
Another thing
peasy.
my wonderful wife does is anytime she puts on like a roll of toilet paper or a roll of paper towel, she always does it backwards.
This is debatable. Okay.
But you versus the world.
Who says it has to go that way? I mean, does it come with instruction? Toilet paper must be.
So this is one that I actually just started noticing in the last few years anyhow, but you mentioned if you've been married a long time and you've kind of gotten a routine, but I think the opposite's true too.
What's that?
I think that for a lot of younger couples, you newly married couples, you're learning to live with each other. And so after that kind of honeymoon phase where everything is great, those things start getting highlighted in your head. You see things that bug you. Right. And you're not used to living with another human being as your wife or your husband. That's new, right? And so I would caution both husbands and wives to kind of mentally take a note of like, man, what do I nitpick? Even if sometimes if it's not, you don't verbalize it, like, that really bugs me when you do this.
Right.
It could kind of be building some like annoyance and anger inside of you that you maybe lash out in other ways. Maybe you don't even realize you're doing it. So I would caution younger couples to look at things that they're nitpicking each other about. And it's really just learning to live with each other and growing together.
That's true. And you may go into it. I feel like I saw a meme recently and it was like, you know, what I envisioned life to be like once we got married, me and my husband. And it was like a meme of Chip and Joanna Gaines, and they're like, us in quarantine, like fixing all the things. And then the other side of it was real life in quarantine. It was like, they're still in their pajamas and the house is a mess and it's like 4:00 in the afternoon and they're like out of shape now, like real life, you know, like
like 5-year engagement. Are you going to get dressed today?
Still in your bunny suit. But maybe they're going into it. And I think maybe couples are going into the marriage with unrealistic expectations.
Right.
Or let's say they have been married for a long time and, you know, they're no longer wearing those rose-colored glasses. I'm still wearing mine. Yeah, I'm still wearing them.
As am I.
But maybe they have unrealistic expectations based on what they think other people are experiencing in a marriage. And it maybe that's why I say we kind of touched on this before with comparison. But it could be that, or it could be maybe just this driving force, you know, that maybe they're not recognizing, but this need for perfectionism, which doesn't exist. But if that's the case and it's their own internal issue, and then they're projecting that on their spouse, you know, because they have this like this pressure for perfectionism in their marriage, in their home, or in their life in general.
So you had written down a note on this of kind of cautioning, you know, is this creating a vicious cycle? Could you kind of, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because I think it's really insightful.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think of it this way, like if I'm nitpicking you or if you're nitpicking me,
only you.
Yeah. I'm the only one who nitpicks. But we both may react differently, but it's still going to trigger a reaction. So for you may feel, oh my gosh, my wife doesn't respect me or Jackie doesn't respect me. And then you get angry. Okay. And you may not verbalize, you may not say anything, but it could be a slow buildup. And as a result, you'll react in other ways. It could be you're going to isolate yourself, be cold to me. And it's a vicious cycle. Then I get angrier, or then I start to notice more, you know, and it could just continuously go on and just snowball into other things. Now, I think, you know, another example would be like, let's say you were nitpicking at me, telling me that I'm irresponsible with our finances, or constantly nitpicking about my spending. You know, another purchase on Amazon, which I don't buy anything on Amazon. Ever. I mean,
Never. It's not coming twice a day.
I've never seen the Amazon truck stuff at our house. But let's say that were the case.
I think our dog knows all the Amazon delivery drivers at this point.
Or they know him. So let's say that was the case and you were constantly nitpicking about every little, just to kind of give an example about my spending, you know,
of how this could turn into like a cycle that just is unhealthy.
I'm not saying this is a real example, but I think this may be existing for other people. Then I decide, you know what? I'm going to hide my spending, and I decide to be sneaky with the spending, and I take money out at the grocery store so you don't know I took cash out here, or I go take out a credit card. Baloney, you know, every penny.
Well, we share everything.
We do. We share everything. And then I go get a hidden credit card and I go and do this. Like,
that's a good example. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how things can turn into a vicious cycle. I mean,
that started with
the nitpicking,
right?
You know, and the constant, like, you know, everybody has a breaking point, you know, because if that person doesn't recognize what they're doing, how do you expect the other person not to react? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's why I say it can become a vicious cycle. And it sounds like in this situation, she said, I nitpick and it drives him into crazy anger. So every time.
That's why I say either if that's it, let's just say she ended the request there, right? She just ended her note to us.
Right.
I'd say that guy's got an anger problem, because if he's going into quote crazy anger over being nitpicked, that's why then she goes on and says, I nag him and I stopped and I do it again. And then it's driving us apart. I try to control him. So like, this is even in her own note, it's devolving into what I think is really the case here. And she's trying to control him. And that's what's causing the crazy anger, or he's got an anger problem that needs to be addressed. And that's why we said off the top, right? This one could be pretty deep. as far as they need to both sit down
and it's hard because, obviously we're just kind of going off of the initial kind of situation
and seeing it through our lens and how we've dealt with some of these situations too. Right. And so anyhow.
Well, and also you're only seeing it from her perspective. Right. So, what she may view as crazy anger, he may just view as,
I flew off the handle and then 30 seconds later,
or it may not even be he flew off the handle.
Or he snapped for a second. Because a lot of men do that. And I do that. And
what?
No, but and it's something I've had to learn, and you've helped me. Is I'll get angry, yell. I've got like a deeper voice. It echoes in the house, and then as far as
a tornado of anger,
swirling about. I'll get angry for like 10 seconds, and then be fine.
Yeah.
And then in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I expect everybody else to be like, oh, Dad's fine, everything's cool. But I just left a trail of like fear or startlement or sheer destruction. But no, you know what I mean? Even if it's just something stupid that I get mad at, it shocks people in the house. And that, I don't want to say it's scarring, but it's at least jarring, right? So it's like, anyhow, we're kind of going off a tangent about anger. But
well, when I just say crazy anger, you know what I mean? Like that, obviously we're only taking how she views it as crazy anger. He may not,
right.
So, but either way, she is saying he is reacting to it. So it's upsetting him.
And she said it's driving us apart. So there's a deeper stuff. So for pure nitpicking, if we're going to kind of leave it, if that's level one, just nitpicking, some of the things we talked about around, how do you kind of move past that and evolve or not evolve? That sounds weird, but like grow together.
Okay.
Right. And I think, there's some really specific things I think you can do here. One, especially in 2020, is really intentionally show grace to the other person.
Yeah.
Like really intentionally say, I'm not going to even worry about that. I'm not worrying about that. I don't care. I'm going to let it not bother me.
Yeah. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Right.
I think that maybe ask yourself, in a year, is this really going to matter?
Okay, you know what? Some things will matter in a year. Like, so if you leave the toilet seat up, and let's say I get up like at 3 a.m. and I fall into the toilet a year from now because you're still leaving it up, that still matters.
That'd be pretty funny. That'd be a good story.
Now you're like, fingers crossed.
That I would tell it every time we go out. No. But I mean, I guess it's more about putting it in perspective. It's kind of along the don't sweat the small stuff, kind of same idea as like, that's your bride. Does that really matter? Is it worth fighting over? Or getting angry about for your own self? Something that I've tried to do, and I think this is actually helpful as we've kind of grown together. And part of that is we've actually used the word grace a lot more with each other. I think over the last like 2.5 years, is like, babe, I need some grace here, please. Yeah. Or you saying, show me grace, Tommy.
Right.
It kind of puts things in. Yeah. But also I've been kind of like having fun with some of it. Like we can kind of turn it, instead of letting it bother me, we'll joke each other around it and have a good laugh. Right. Yeah. Or I'll make a little game of, all right, I'm going to walk around and turn all the toilet paper rolls around and all the paper towel rolls around in the house. Or if you always sweep up your piles and then don't throw them, the little piles in the trash till later.
This is a huge, I know it's a pet peeve of yours, and I don't do it to irritate you.
I know you don't. It's just funny why you do it. I don't get it.
Because I like to sweep up the piles and then vacuum up the piles. So I'll sweep them up.
Except
and then
you just forget about it and you move on to something else. And then there's a little tiny pile of dust in the kitchen floor or something. Yeah. And I've got mine. I know, the toilet seat. I leave my shoes everywhere.
You leave. And here's the thing.
I'm actually neater with my
because your shoes are so enormous. I've tripped over your shoes. That's actually almost caused an injury. Okay. That's my concern with the whole shoe situation. I will gladly put your shoes where they belong, but it's when I trip over them that, yes, maybe it'll set me off.
It kind of reminds me of, like making it, well, I'll tell the analogy here in a second, but like, make it something fun that's just between you and the two of you, right? I know sweeping up piles of dust is not unique to me and you, but when we joke about it, it is. It's us. That's our thing. It's between me and you.
Right.
It's like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. Remember, he was saying,
what's that?
His wife used to fart in her sleep, And that's like the thing he remembers the most about it, because it was unique. It was shared between just the two of them. And then
But you can't nitpick somebody about farting in their
I know,
sleep.
but my
How could
point
she
is,
control that?
my point is like, have fun with it. Like that was a special memory for him in that movie, you know, as that, because his wife had passed away.
Yeah.
And he would do anything to like have her back in bed farting in his face. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be morbid, but the point is like, have fun with it.
Way to bring it to a dark place.
That's right. It's all about farting in bed.
Well, here's the thing. And I would also say the first thing obviously is recognizing that you're doing it. You know, and then of course, you know, obviously the other steps that you had mentioned, but first off, recognizing that. And even though we've talked about some of the things that maybe would nitpick or we joke about, we also don't really know what are the things that are maybe triggering her to actually nitpick or nag. So we don't know. I mean, that they may be more severe than leaving piles of dust around. I don't know. But,
I feel like nitpicking is, let's leave that as level 1.
okay. Yeah.
Right.
That's fair.
Like
Because
if
it should be
we're going to
little,
say that's
little
level
things
1,
that we say nitpick.
yeah. Whereas like nagging, although I think for us, when we talked about this, the difference in our minds between nagging and nitpicking is more about nagging is about, I need something done, or I want something, or I'm asking you to do this, or I'm asking that, versus just you do this, you are this, or whatever. Right. And I think it's a little different.
Yeah.
But,
you are this, or you don't do this, or well, I do this, and you know, I do this, this, and this, and you never do this. You know, that's kind of nitpicking, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's easier to kind of fix. I think nagging can kind of go a little bit deeper. And definitely I think that's, you know, as we kind of diagnose nagging, what you may think is nagging, or what I may think is nagging, is something that you have a deep-seated reason for saying that over and over again. And so we'll talk about that in a second. But I think, so I'll ask you, when does a request or an ask become nagging?
In your book or mine?
That's why I
The
asked.
second request is a nag to you. And maybe the 15th is a nag to me. I'm just teasing you. So when I think about nagging, because I feel like, honestly, like I wouldn't say like the second or third time sounds like a nag to me, because I don't recognize it as nagging. I also think it's the way you say it. So it's like the way I would request. And a lot of times if I'm asking you repeatedly for something, it's something that I can't do myself. So it could be something that, you know, just because it's a repair that needs to be done in the home that I physically can't do myself, or I'm not tall enough to reach a place, which happens most of the time. I feel like maybe around the 5th or 6th time, it can come across as nagging. And it's probably because of my tone at that point that it comes across as nagging, because then I feel like you just don't care. You know, you're like purposely ignoring me.
5th or 6th request. It's reached nagging stage long before that.
That's why I said the second time.
If I've been ignoring it, or if I guess, I don't know. This is kind of hard, because if it's something I just honestly forgot about, and then I forgot about it again. Yeah. You know, life's busy. We're all busy. Then it's not truly nagging. Yeah. Right. But if it's, I'm just ignoring you, or I said I'd do it, and then you kept nagging me about it, and I said I'd do it, you know, and then it just creates this argument, right?
There have been times, though, I will say, like, there have been times that I've said, hey, Tommy, can you do whatever, X, Y, Z? And you're like, yeah, sure. And then, like, you never say, no, I'm not going to do that. It's never like that. And it's always a kind request. You know, it's usually something like around the house or something that we really need to get done. And then, like, let's say 2 or 3 days later, because you said we get busy, right? And then I'm like, hey, remember when I asked you about X, Y, Z? Can you do that? You never asked me to do that. That's how busy you are, that you'll be like, yeah, sure. I don't even think you heard my request.
Or did I? And then I just use that excuse and you just buy it.
The jig is up.
The jig's up. Well, I'm about to blow your cover here in a second when we give an example. You go first. What's an example of where I've nagged you, or if not me specifically, but like men versus women?
Okay, so men versus women with nagging. I don't know if you would consider this nagging, but Well, I mean, you've nagged me, I guess, about the toothpaste, like,
That's nitpicking.
is that nitpicking? I don't know.
We already agreed that was nitpicking.
Okay. I don't know. Would you consider this nagging like with sex? I feel like men say, I feel like this is a common thing. I'm not saying you are doing this, but I'm not saying you haven't ever done it.
I have done it.
No, I'm saying you have done it. I'm not saying you're doing it now, but I'm going to say this is probably something we experienced in our earlier years of marriage, because I think it's a maturity thing too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think men often, and we had experiences before, say, how come I'm always the one initiating sex?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a common thing that men nag their wives about.
Which I've done, and it's logically, it's counterproductive, right? It's not like the wife's like, oh yeah.
And now
Thanks
I'm the one saying, how come I'm always...
Which is fine by me. But honestly, that's counterproductive. If I'm nagging you,
what do you think's going to happen?
Why don't you ever initiate sex? I'm always the one doing it. And you're going to be like, oh
well,
yeah,
then.
now that really turns me on.
Yeah.
But,
you're going to be irritated. And this kind of takes the fun out of it also.
Right.
It's like, I don't know, killing the mood.
All right. Well, I think I will blow the lid off of either your evil genius or your previous
What's that?
immaturity. So for you, one of the things that has, as I'm thinking about it now, it's really something I think is more of an immaturity, like a maturity thing that you've grown, is in the past.
I know what you're going to say.
I mean, I'm not even going to give a specific example, but it tends to be around repairs or automobile stuff.
Okay.
And what you've done, and you've done it to the point where so let's say you have a repair, right? Tommy, I really want you to, can you just fix that? Can you fix that? Can you fix that? And then it becomes nagging. And then I've said, yes, I'll get it. Then you go, I'm just going to take care of it myself.
But
and
how
you're
is that?
like,
That's
I'm
not
going
nagging. That's not nagging.
That's manipulating.
It's not manipulating.
And it's evil genius. Here's why. Because I get angry and I storm out and then go do it. So, yeah, that's happened. When you've literally like, I'm just going to call a plumber. I'm just going to, and I know my limitations. Like, I don't mess with electrical. I don't, if it's plumbing that's over my head, I just, I'll call. I'm no problem doing that. But when I've told you I will fix it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm just going to call a plumber myself or call a handyman or a painter, whatever. That blows my lid. That really like sets me off. And you haven't done that in years, but like
I haven't. But here's the thing.
What do you think I was going to say?
I actually knew you were going to say that. And I was going to mention that. I was going to say, you know what? I'm not going to nag. I'm just going to take care of it myself because I know that's just a hot button.
Is that what you thought?
Jokingly. No, joking.
But in the past, did you think, were you just angry at me or were you...
No, because you get sick of asking. Like, I didn't want to ask again. So I'd be like, I'm just going to take care of it myself. But if I had taken care of it, here's the thing.
Do you see my perspective on that?
Hear me out though.
Okay.
What if I hadn't said, I'm going to go ahead and take care of it, but I went ahead and took care of it and told you after the fact, I went ahead and
I would have been equally as angry.
Would you really have cared? Honestly, would you really have cared?
Yes.
In the midst of our busy lives, is it, what is it about? Is it an ego thing or is it like, what is it?
Yes. It's
an ego thing.
It's ego.
Yeah. So if I'm not doing it to,
but if you know
be disrespectful or to hurt you,
but
I'm
if
like,
I've told you it hurts me,
busy.
But if I've told you it hurts me when you do that, it hurts my ego. I've even admitted that hurts my ego. That makes me feel like you're cutting my, off. And then if you did it after that, that's now I'm like, you kidding me?
Well, there were times when you were traveling for business that if you're not physically
that's
here,
different. Like,
I mean,
the water heater went out twice
while you were gone.
It exploded like
were
twice.
You angry that I took care of it?
No, that's different, babe. That's not what I'm talking about. What it is,
the air conditioner went out while you were gone.
Way over my head. Like that, I would have called too. Mm-hmm. Like that's an immediate. You got to get it fixed. Not, it's more the minor, and with the car stuff too. That one really bothers me.
I don't do that really. I don't do that anymore. I used to do that, but it really.
I think we've come to we've grown into that. That's something we've grown into. Both my response and your
I love how
nagging.
you're like, it's evil genius, because I wasn't thinking I'll say this and then it'll motivate him to do it. I was thinking, I'm just going to tell him I'm going to go ahead and
Motivate's
do
like,
it.
there's a positive connotation to the word motivate. It's more of like angrily force his hand.
I did do that. I'm guilty of doing it, but I want you to know that I wasn't thinking in the back of my mind, like, oh, I'm going to say this because this will really light a match under his rear to get it done. I was thinking along the lines of like, this is me just telling you, look, I'm frustrated asking anymore. I'm just going to go get it done,
Right. Which sometimes, and there's been times where we've even come to an agreement, like, you know what, I just don't have the time. I'm not going to be able to get to it, babe. If you want to just pay somebody or whatever.
Okay. So what would you recommend? Like, I think I had asked you this before. So let's say I've asked you 3 times or 5 or 10. And then, sorry. And then I say, you know what? I'm not going to ask him anymore. I'm just going to put it in his calendar as a reminder. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's fine. If it's something that we have talked about in passing, or like, I'm like, crap, I'm sorry, I forgot to do that. Yeah. Could, sometimes I even say, could you just put it in my calendar? Cause we share our calendar app. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So you wouldn't consider that nagging if I did put it in there as a
well,
reminder?
I think you kind of, I think you come to an agreement before you do it that like, hey, I'm just going to put this in the calendar. Let's agree that because of our busy lives with the electronic calendars that sync every, device we own. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a very easy way to do it and not be nagging. And then then let the reminders that pop up, the calendar reminders be the nag.
Let my phone be the nag. Yeah. What is a better way to communicate it then? Like if you're looking back, okay, I know we've grown from this, right? Mm-hmm. But looking back earlier on in our marriage when I maybe was really nagging or doing those things, what could I have done differently?
Well, back to my example, I think that it's important that the wife, and just this specific example, when it was referring to something, let's call it more manly type things, fixing something in the house. I'm not saying women can't do it and wives can't do it. Everybody's capable. I'm just saying.
I don't want to do it.
Well, I grew up doing it. I grew up doing a lot of those things. I know how to do it, and I do it, certain things I can do well. Like I said, once it gets past my ceiling, I'm not going to sit there and spend 5 hours trying to figure out an electrical issue and, possibly like shock myself. Like I'm going to
Please don't do that.
I'm going to pay somebody to do that. I think that, in that scenario, it's important for the wife to say, okay, wait a minute, recognize why he's getting angry about my trying to nagging about these things. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm kind of cutting him. I'm cutting his ego. I'm emasculating him a bit by, in that case of, I'm just going to pay somebody to get it done. Mm-hmm. Not because that's the impression that most men would probably get if it's a scenario where the man said, yeah, I'm going to fix it, babe. I'm going to take care of it. Let me take care of it. What's not said there is, I'm the man. I'll take care of it. I can do this. Let me do this, and I may not say that out loud, but it's like, babe, I'll take care of it. And then,
I don't think you respond and say, I'm the man.
No, well, that's what's going on in our heads.
Well, that's okay. I'm saying you don't say that to me. Like you may say, you do say, babe, let me take care of this. Or I want to take care of this. Mm-hmm. Let me do this.
So you asked the others, like, how could you communicate it better?
Yeah. How could you communicate it better? Or how can I communicate it better?
Honestly, and this is, have fun with it. I think we talked about this on a previous episode, is, make it a little, what's wrong with kind of flirting about it, or, offering a little quid pro quo.
Tommy Kite.
Come on. It's fun. You want to talk about motivating a husband, even if you don't like follow through, it's just the flirtation of it is fun, and it can kind of literally light the fire under his ass.
All right.
So I think that's but the reverse, how could a husband communicate if they're nagging their wife about something?
Yeah.
How, from your perspective, how could I communicate better, when I'm nagging you about something?
A lot of it, honestly, with you, if you are nagging me, which I don't really think you nag that much, but I mean, if you have nagged me in the past, the thing that sets me off is not really the request, it's really your tone.
Mm-hmm.
Your tone is probably what would set me off more so than asking whatever the request is. Because I never, if I honestly don't do something, it's because I forgot. I do need to set reminders for myself. Can be very forgetful when I get busy with other things, but yeah, I feel like it's more so the tone. Mm-hmm. And then also then I kind of feel like the nagging can sound like nitpicking, it makes me feel like, I don't know. I just feel like then you're angry or irritated and it makes me feel like I'm failing,
Mm-hmm.
That has to do with your tone and your delivery. And that's where I think that the husband needs to be in tune with, what is sensitive to his wife, and the wife needs to be in tune to, what is sensitive to her husband. So like you mentioned, me saying or doing certain things when it comes to nagging would make you feel emasculated or make you feel like you're not the man and the husband, and you want to take care of those things. But also on my end, I feel like if I've made a request and you're not doing it, and, I've made a request 2, 3, 4, 5 times and it's important to me, you're telling me it's not important to you. Yeah.
I mean, and I think that we were talking about this too, and it's something I hadn't even thought about. It's something I didn't think when we were kind of discussing this episode, I didn't think through that. Mm-hmm. Now, when we have those scenarios, I think that that's something that I've, hopefully, I'm certainly not there yet, but like now that we know each other a lot better and I know you a lot more, and I certainly learned a lot more about you over the last couple of years, as far as like what drives certain actions and behaviors. And I know that if you're repeatedly saying something, which I could interpret as nagging, there's something driving that behavior. And I tend to know what that is now. And so I have a different perspective of why you're so adamant about certain things.
Yeah.
Whether, there's things, and I think this is just the general, you mentioned being sensitive, but I think the general kind of big picture that everyone should look at when they're considering these nagging type of arguments is take a step back and say, okay, why is she or why is he reacting this way?
Yeah, there could be something else going on.
Is fear driving it? Is insecurity driving it? So I think it's important to have talk through those conversations, or talk through those situations, and try to understand why, and not react to the actual nagging. Right? Yeah. Maybe take a step back, walk away.
I would do that. Take a step back. I think we've done that before. And I know that we do that now, probably more so now. We recognize when to take a step away, whether it's a 30-minute break and then come back, regroup. That's something that we probably didn't do in the beginning of our marriage, but, a lot of this it's learning, but,
and to your point about sensitivity, I think this is definitely something that, this is what you brought this up to me in this conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I know I've tried to evolve, to mature a lot of times, but this is definitely somewhere where I have to go. Is I may not care about what you're asking me to do, and selfishly think that's just not important, and not realize how important it is to you.
Yeah.
And what damage I'm causing by blowing you off. It's basically just saying, you're not important to me, in so many words. And so, in our relationship, that tends to be, I think that's the direction that happens. I don't tend to nag you about something and you just blow me off because you don't think it's important, maybe except being on time. That one you just don't care about.
I'm working on that. I have gotten better.
But I did hear a sermon where, the pastor was talking about that bugs him too. His wife, whenever we get there, and the husband's always sitting in the car, honking the horn.
Yeah.
And one of his kids, was in the car while they're waiting for mom.
Yeah.
And, he's like, oh, your mom's always late, just venting. And then the little boy was like, wasn't she worth waiting for?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, damn.
Schooled by his
Got me.
child.
I actually think about that when I'm in the car, like pounding on the steering wheel for you to come down.
You don't honk the horn, though.
I stopped doing that. I've done that in the past.
I don't remember you doing that.
I do it with the boys.
Yes, you have done it with the boys.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So
Yeah. Well,
some introspection there of what's driving that, and then why are you not responding? Another thing I will say, and this is just from a husband's perspective. I think that, and this is where I think a husband and I've needed to improve my communication back to you around certain things, is you may be nagging me about something. A lot of times it's for us, it's like automotive stuff or like stuff around the house. And I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I know where something is in its life cycle or in its maintenance cycle. And you keep nagging me about something. And instead of just kind of, basically it's kind of going back to that emasculating thing. It's like, I know what I'm doing. And instead of like communicating them back to you, like, I need you to trust me here. I would just get angry.
Yeah.
Right. And then blow up, and then it turns into a fight versus, that's a two-way street, right? I need to communicate better, or maybe I think the husbands need to communicate better in those types of scenarios, but the wives also need to, okay, I'm going to trust my husband. That the brakes aren't going to just stop working, or
the brakes are a big deal.
I know. So I've had to,
I'm not
we were
going to go
joking
there
about
with
this
the
earlier.
brakes.
No, but that's my point is.
That's a serious.
I know. And so on the automotive one, husbands, here's a good one. You can come back to kind of, if it's about cars and maintenance on cars, is just say, have you ever been stranded, honey? Have I ever done, not kept up with the cars to the point where you've been stranded or blown a tire or brakes not worked? And the answer is always no. And then I walk away successful in my argument. Yeah, right.
You're rolling the dice. So what if one day it's like, yeah, that did happen.
No, but then
you can never use that ever again, literally.
I wouldn't. Yeah, you're right. But that hasn't, because I tend to know what I'm doing. And so that's something we've both matured towards. I think I've communicated better, and I think you've tended to trust me more on those types of scenarios.
Yeah.
So husbands, wives, I think it's a two-way street, like anything in a marriage, but just be mindful of those kind of things.
Yeah, it definitely goes both ways, but I think probably the best thing that we've learned with nagging, or at least I think I have, is taking a step back.
I agree.
And taking a little bit of a break, because
whether you're being nagged or whether you're nagging.
Yeah. On both ends. I'm saying, even if I'm the nagger or if you're the nagger, whichever, it's good to just take a step away and then regroup and then just communicate that better.
Yeah, I agree.
So obviously our listener had mentioned that she's controlling her husband.
Yeah.
And truthfully, I think, nitpicking and nagging, while they're extremely serious and can snowball into, even bigger issues, both of them are definitely linked to controlling, and controlling, I feel like, is probably the most serious thing. When I'm reading this, I feel like controlling can be extremely dangerous on both ends, whether it's the husband doing this or the wife in any relationship.
And this can take so many forms, right? And
It
she
really
didn't really
can.
mention.
I mean, this is a deeper one that probably should go, I would say, depending on the level of controlling or control, is something that you probably should discuss with a counselor to find out what really is happening in the relationship, or something internal with the wife or the husband, that may really be causing this behavior. I mean, I think controlling, but let's just say, we don't really know. So obviously what level of that controlling looks like. So, what are your thoughts on controlling? Like, what different types of forms, or what would this look like?
You already hit on it, but I mean, she in her statement or her question to us, she started with nitpicking and nagging, and then she says she tries to control her husband. So maybe she uses nitpicking and nagging to try to control him in her mind. She may not know any different. Maybe she grew up in a house and that's just the dynamic that her mom and dad had. Maybe she has insecurities or things that, this is where we're talking about, like, why it's so important to the couple needs to sit down and someone that's objective and can and
really see firsthand,
and help the each other, help the husband and the wife to see each other's perspective and kind of force that hand. Because, I gather that in her note that at least she recognized, I think that's for controlling. And this is one of the things we talked about. I think that self-recognition is key, right? If I'm a controlling person over you, let's say I'm trying to control you and I'm intentionally trying to control you. I'm not changing until I realize it's a problem and I want to change, right? You telling me it's a problem, I'm like, I don't care. I'm, in that type of scenario. So I think the fact that she is recognizing she's trying to control him and trying to stop is, I think, important. But like, right when we go back to the beginning, it's controlling your spouse to that degree where it's she says it's driving us apart. That's a marriage counseling scenario.
Well, there can be different types of, I feel like.
Yeah, I didn't even answer your question. Sorry.
It's okay. I see women that when they're trying to, or they are controlling their husband to a certain extent, I feel like the control is more along the lines of they are treating them like a child.
Yes. I think I've talked about this.
Instead of like, you had mentioned it, and I have seen this, and it's almost like they're treating them like they're incompetent at all times, like really like a child. And I don't know if some men like that. I'm just saying, maybe some people really don't see an issue with it and they kind of like to be under that kind of control. But that is one form of control that I feel like I see women do more so to their husbands, treating them as though they're a child versus the other way around. But there are other forms of control, whether it goes, husband to wife, wife to husband, where they may really try to control every moment of their day, what they're doing every weekend, who their friends are,
Yeah, that's abuse. That's not just controlling. That's deep abuse, right? But it happens.
It can't, but it happens when people really try to control every single thing. How often they get to see their family members, or be involved in, certain activities like, I don't know, health and it can be really anything to that extent.
And we're not talking about things like,
or controlling their spending. It can get to where obviously you want to be on a budget with your spouse, but yes, there are. And I'm going to say this is more so husbands, where the husband really controls the purse strings and the wife absolutely has no say and has to ask the husband for $20. Like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. That can take all sorts of forms too. We could go down.
Yeah. So there's so many, we don't understand. We don't know
the why.
I don't know what type of control, what type of actions she's considering controlling. But if it's any one of these, and when it gets to that point of controlling someone, whether they feel like they're recognizing I'm becoming a little bit, or I'm trying to really mold this person into someone they're not, just to appease myself, which obviously that's a selfish want. In your marriage, you're supposed to be growing together. I'm not here to make you what I want. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Turning you into, robot or whatever I want out of my husband. The goal should be let's grow together. So I think that's a little bit of a selfish thing, if you're wanting to control that person.
Yeah. I think that you asked like, what kind of forms? I think nitpicking, nagging, definitely. You mentioned money, controlling the money, or controlling your friends who you're allowed to be on. And like you said, the goal is to grow together. So there are times where it's also, you have to understand that, the person that is, feeling like they're being controlled, it may be something that's a very reasonable, request, like
how so?
Well, if it's a newly married couple, like, he shouldn't be going out to clubs with his buddies on Friday nights if that's what he did for years.
You really need to stop doing that, Tommy.
I know. I just can't stay away. I just like to break. But you know what I mean? Like, that's one example where she may say, sweetheart, I don't think that's appropriate. And, I don't like you being around all those single guys all the time.
Well, I don't really consider that controlling if it's things that are really unhealthy for their relationship.
Well, my point there is the guy may not see anything wrong with it. And he's like, you're just trying to control me.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a maturity thing that he needs to, in that case, look at it and say, okay, wait a minute. My wife's that's a very reasonable request.
Do you feel like I'm trying to control you when I say, please put the toilet seat down?
No, that's just nitpicking for no reason.
You're trying to control my toilet paper situation with how
it spins.
Yes, how it spins.
It spins better when it's over the top.
Maybe I like it to spin the other way.
Well, you're just wrong.
So controlling.
I think it can take, like I said, it can take so many forms. We talked about it, verbally kind of manipulating your spouse with negative speak just to kind of get what you want.
Yeah.
And like how dangerous that is.
Trying to break them down to the point where they do kind of give up and they
terrible.
may give in, but gosh, what are you doing in the long run to this person?
What end? Yeah.
You're really killing their spirit. And do you really want to do that to your husband or your wife?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You mentioned keeping score. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when I think of keeping score, like I think of more
how is that controlling? Yeah.
So like more along the person, and this could be husband or wife, but I'm going to say just from a woman's perspective that like maybe I'm the wife that's treating you like you're a child, right? Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, when you think about a wife who's trying to control her husband in that sense, she may say, well, I did this today and I did that today. What did you do? And kind of like giving you, instead of like a honey-do list, maybe like nagging you about, chores, mm-hmm. or kind of like, comparing, like I do more than you. That's kind of like a keeping score situation. I also think it could be a keeping score on the man's end. Like I said earlier with, I am the one who has, what's the word? Initiated mm-hmm. sex the last 5 times, that's keeping score too. That's unhealthy on both ends, whether it's with chores or I feel like that's kind of a controlling thing, and keeping score always makes the other person go on the defensive.
Right.
You're never going to be like, thanks for reminding me.
Right. But you do have to find balance for just life. Mm-hmm. Right. And so sometimes that requires more mature conversations.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The delivery should not be that way.
Right.
You can go to your spouse and say, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed.
I need this. Now, I need you to take this off my plate.
I feel like the last few weeks I've cooked every meal. I would really like a night to just go take a bath and not mm-hmm. have to cook dinner. Would you mind cooking dinner tonight? Or like, can we break up the week a little bit differently?
And then not expect anything. If that was the case, what's also not, we're kind of going off a tangent, but like mm-hmm. if you
take us down that rabbit hole, Tommy.
Well, if you asked me to do that and I did that, and it would be keeping score if I then turned around and said, well, I did this for you last night.
Yeah.
I already did that. I already took care of that or something. Mm-hmm. You just, I guess that's
more. That's a keeping score too.
It is. And if you do that aggressively, you're controlling in a negative way. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between, I think the big picture is and this is something honestly, I do try to mentally kind of keep a framework or a lens mm-hmm. is this building our marriage or is it tearing our marriage apart? Mm-hmm. Like, is it going towards each other, or is it, even if it's a one little thing, it's still a small tear, right? Or it's still we're in opposite directions.
Yeah.
And we always want to be going towards each other and mm-hmm. building each other up, building our marriage up.
Right.
Not doing anything that's going to tear it down in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. I think if you kind of have that perspective around any of this stuff of how you respond and what you do, it can be helpful. That's what I found.
Right.
And I think it's caused me to mature on certain things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we both have. We both
absolutely.
matured. So hopefully this was really helpful to our listener.
So back on we've for nitpicking and nagging, we did solutions for both. We've kind of hit it pretty hard on the I think on the controlling side, as far as, we've kind of talked through some of the solutions, but I think that number one, I think that a lot of these controlling scenarios is going to be don't bring in your family or your mother-in-law, mm-hmm. I think you need an objective resource to help work through some of those things. Mm-hmm. And,
like
family's not objective.
They're not a neutral party.
They're not a neutral party. Yeah. But the big thing, and kudos to this lady for writing in, mm-hmm. she said she's seeking resources. I think she recognizes there's an issue. Obviously, mm-hmm. she recognizes there's an issue.
That's the first step, recognizing
especially
it.
when it's the level of controlling,
mm-hmm.
right? If you're nitpicking me about something, I can tell you about it, and you can like, oh crap, I didn't realize doing that, or oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
But how many times are people, experiencing this, and they go to their spouse and they say, look, I really feel like you're nagging me or you're nitpicking me. No, I'm not. So I want to say kudos to this listener for recognizing it, because that's the first step.
But I think she's got some deeper, and this goes into our second point. If you're just kind of having these discussions with your spouse, is or really ask yourself, man, what's driving my behavior? Why am I being
looking
controlling?
inward. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, looking inward. Like, what's driving that? Is it, we talked about, am I projecting?
Is it 2020?
Well, that's right. There's a reason.
That could be a possibility for some people right now.
But if people feel cornered, a lot of times, you lash out.
Yeah.
But, fear, is there a fear that's driving this? Like an irrational fear, something that happened in your childhood that's now, I have to, like, if I don't have complete control over this, like, I can't let go of control over something, or an insecurity. We talked about, is this just a projection of something else like at work? If the spouse is away at work and their boss is just, is it that controlling micromanagement type of boss, and then they react by trying to control and micromanage their spouse somehow, that like, that's going to make things better. I think you have to ask yourself, what's driving this? And then on the flip side is, if it's not normal behavior, I think, let's say that all of a sudden you started doing something really controlling towards me. I should think, and I should ask myself,
like hiding the chocolate chip cookies.
Well, that's just smart.
I'm going to control your sugar intake.
Please.
Because I love you.
I know. There'd be some anger issues on my side if that happened. No, but if all of a sudden it's coming out of left field, like, instead of maybe being angry, if let's say you were doing that to me or I was doing that to you, the opposite partner should say, Tommy or Jackie, babe, what's driving this? Something's, what's happened? Going on? What's going on?
Yeah.
Because this isn't normal behavior, right? And so hopefully you recognize that in your spouse and in yourself, but seek help for controlling, because controlling issues can, you hate for it to go down a bad path. But it can.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to be controlled like that. So
I think some people are maybe scared to take the next step with counseling, because there's maybe a stigma around it. But I would say, like, who cares? Counseling is, you go to counseling for so many other things.
Yeah, your marriage is the most important relationship on this planet.
Yeah.
It should be, between husband and wife. So yeah, just get it fixed. Don't let it fester. Don't let it create resentment and bitterness. And I think for the other things, the big thing for nitpicking and nagging is, just have open communication about it, and approach the partner, your spouse, with love and with grace. Show
and try
a lot
to make
of grace.
light of things. We do.
Yeah, have fun and make light of things. We laugh about them now, right?
We do. We laugh about it. Like, we really do.
Yeah, and have fun with it.
Every time I trip over your shoes, I'm like,
yeah, right.
He's a hoot.
Every time I come downstairs and there's a pile, I actually think it's funny now. I almost like, well, how many piles of dirt am I going to find that she hasn't vacuumed up yet? It's fun.
Yeah.
And now that, like, when you start thinking it that way, especially because it's not a big deal.
No, they're little things.
But like being late and not caring about your husband wanting to be on time, that's a big deal. I love that line. That line from that kid that I don't know. Like,
he's going places.
It resonates in my head.
That kid's going to be a good husband.
Well, yeah, right?
He is.
Well, Dad, isn't Mom worth waiting for?
He's going to be a great husband.
Oh, right in the side. Yes, yes, you are. Yes, you are, baby. I love you.
I love you too.
I can't wait to see what things bother us in 20 years that we laugh about.
Or in 2021. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? But, well, we hope this was helpful for you guys. This is, a lot of our lives. We've gone, this whole episode really is been through our lens, like all of our episodes are, but this one's a little bit more kind of easy to talk about, because if you're a younger couple and just got married, like, we went through this too. We both had insecurities or fears, or, we just didn't have the knowledge around of how to live with each other. And so some of those things really did cause a lot of fights and things
Right.
but if you work through it and you're both committed, man, you guys can, you can move past it and then have fun with it.
Yeah. You
Work
really
at it.
can.
It's intentional grace is, I think, maybe the two biggest words for this whole thing, right?
And she's headed in the right direction. So,
Agreed.
The first step has been made,
Yeah.
which I think is great.
And asking for grace too.
Yes.
That goes a long way. I'm sorry. I'm working on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to our episode today. We hope it was helpful for you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Yeah. Be sure to listen.
It's almost Christmas. So if we don't hear from you guys or we're not able to get an episode out next week because all the family coming in town and it's going to be a little crazy. We definitely have an intention to do another pre-Christmas episode. But if not, we hope you and your families have a wonderful COVID-free Christmas. And we will talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if so, please continue to listen and subscribe on Podbean, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. We would greatly appreciate positive reviews, and we will answer any questions at feedback@destinationmarriagepodcast.com. For up-to-date content and news about the podcast, you can follow us on Instagram at destination_marriage and visit our website at destinationmarriagepodcast.com. Be sure to tune in next week.